Avatar Roku was the avatar before Aang. He taught Aang a lot, but actually had a very interesting story of his own. His story goes beyond the original series, expanding in video games, books, the sequel series, and so on. All of that information can be overwhelming, so in this video I'm going to take a look at his character and go through all mediums that he appeared in as I explain the entire life of Avatar Roku and break his character down. Roku was born in the Fire Nation, continuing the Avatar life cycle, as the Avatar before him, Avatar Kyoshi, was an earthbender. In his youth, he was a cheerful young man who wore his heart on his sleeve. He easily befriended people around him because of his welcoming personality. At an early age, he became friends with Sozin, who was the prince of the Fire Nation. The two were best friends and shared many things like toys, advice, and even a birthday. Every year, they had a conjoined birthday party, which was a very big deal as Sozin was the prince. Roku never saw Sozin the way that others saw him. All he saw was the friend that he had always known and grown up with. Roku lived in Sozin's shadow most of his early life. Roku wasn't anything special growing up. In fact, he was a bit of a nobody. He could not talk to girls, he wasn't very good at fighting, Sozin taking him down almost every time, and he tended to be clumsy and embarrass himself, something that Sozin tried to help him with by catching him when he fell. During their 16th birthday celebration, Sozin once again caught Roku when he tripped looking at the girl he liked, Ta Min. The events that took place at that party would change Roku's life forever when the Fire Sages came up to him and Sozin. At first, the two thought that they were there for Sozin, but instead, they were there to announce that Roku was the next Avatar. He was shocked and went from being a nobody to one of the most respected people in the world. Everyone bowed down to him, and Sozin, his best friend, who had always been his superior, was the last to bow. Roku was no longer in Sozin's shadow. For the first time, Sozin was in his. Roku knew that he had to leave the Fire Nation and face his destiny as the Avatar. In order to learn the other three elements, he had to travel the world. Roku started to pack his things, but was interrupted by the Fire Sages, who told him that there was no need, as he would not have any worldly possessions anymore. Everything was changing, and Roku was overwhelmed. He felt as though everything was happening too fast. Before Roku left, he had one last meeting with his best friend. When Roku told him about not having any worldly possessions, Sozin took off his headpiece that indicated he was royalty. While handing it to him, Sozin told him that he hoped that he could at least keep that. Roku treasured that headpiece for the rest of his life, a token from his longtime friend, and wore it every day that he lived. Roku began his Avatar journey by first going to the Southern Air Temple to learn airbending. There he met Gyatso, who would later go on to train Roku in his next life, training Aang. The two fooled around during lessons, but when it came down to it, Roku took his training very seriously. He learned how to air glide, and even made up some new moves like somersaulting in the air. To learn waterbending, Roku went to the Northern Water Tribe. Every Avatar struggles with the element that's the opposite of theirs. The opposite of firebending was waterbending, so Roku struggled with this element the most. While there, Roku grew a beard that was common with waterbenders, and immersed himself into the culture to help him better master and understand their element. He eventually mastered it, and was so good that he was able to send his teacher flying into the Northern Water Tribe's center city. After mastering fire, air, and water, Roku had to master his fourth and final element, earthbending. He went to the Earth Kingdom, and there he met his teacher, Master Sud. Roku described Sud as being uncompromising, stubborn, and blunt, but he ultimately became a lifelong friend of Roku's. By the end of Roku's training with Sud, he was able to beat him up a mountain while surfing on rocks. Roku went through 11 years of training to realize his full potential when bending all four elements. He said that it was bitter work, but said that it was well worth it. By the end of his training, he was very powerful. However, he still needed to master the Avatar state and become one with the spirit world. The Fire Sages helped Roku master this, specifically the Fire Sage Kaja. Roku struggled to clear his mind and eventually got frustrated. After 5 months of training, he said that he had not gotten any closer to mastering the Avatar state. He was impatient and because of this, decided to use the Winter Solstice Sun to help him. It worked, and it helped him get into the Avatar state, but he did not know how to control himself. He blew the roof off of the temple and was stuck in the state. Roku became frantic when he could see his body, but could not control it. Luckily, Kaja, who Roku admitted was wiser than him, got him out of it. Afterwards, Kaja told Roku that he had to rebuild the temple, and then they would continue his Avatar state training. Roku did just that, and actually called the temple his home for a while. He built secret passageways using magma from the volcano below it. There was also a statue built of Roku in the room where the winter solstice sun hits. When the sun hit it during the solstice, his eyes would light up, just like he was in the Avatar state. Roku eventually mastered the Avatar state, and was able to talk to his past lives for guidance. Roku eventually became one with the spirit world as well, and was able to fulfill his duty as the bridge between man and spirit. Roku finally returned home to the Fire Nation after 11 years of bending training and 1 year of Spirit World and Avatar State training. He was at last reunited with his old friend for the first time in 12 years. Sozin was now the Fire Lord, and when Roku approached him, he told him his subjects usually bowed before him, but that he was the exception. The two hugged, and even after all those years apart, Sozin was still Roku's best friend. While Roku was back in the Fire Nation, he was reunited with his childhood crush, Ta-Min. Back in the day, she barely knew that he was alive, but when he got back, Roku was persistent, and he ended up winning her over. When they got together, Roku believed that the two found each other because his love for her was so real. He also jokingly added that being the Avatar did not hurt his chances either. After dating for a while, Roku asked her to marry him, and she said yes. Roku then asked his longtime friend Sozin to be his best man, and he too accepted. After the ceremony, Sozin asked Ta-Min if he could borrow Roku. Here Sozin commented on how much power they would have if they teamed up, and said it was destined to happen. He told Roku that the Fire Nation should take over and expand their prosperity to make the world an empire ruled by the Fire Nation. Roku's job as the Avatar was to keep peace between all four nations, and he was forced to shut his friend down, saying that the four nations were meant to stay equal and separate. Roku left, saying that was the last he wanted to hear about it. Roku believed that this was his first real test as the Avatar, and it was very difficult. Sozin had been his friend since the beginning, and he wanted to keep it that way. He still wore the headpiece that Sozin had given him before he left, and Roku cherished it even after all those years, so shutting him down was very difficult, especially when Sozin wanted them to fight side by side as they had always dreamed of as kids. Roku continued to travel the world, now accompanied by his wife, Ta-Min. He fulfilled his Avatar duties, both in the spirit world and in the mortal world. Ta-Min eventually stopped traveling with him when the two had a daughter that they named Rina. The three lived on an island 100 miles away from the Fire Nation capital, and the island would later be named Roku's Island, named after Roku himself. Ta-Min and Rina stayed there full time, while Roku continued to travel the world where he was needed, but during his downtime, he stayed on the island with his family. One day, Roku found a dragon egg, but its parents were nowhere to be found. Roku decided to raise the young dragon as his own, and named it Fang. The two were inseparable, and Fang became his friendly and loyal steed. One day, many years after his conversation with his old friend Sozin, Roku discovered that despite his warning, Sozin had gone along with his plans of domination, first taking over land in the Earth Kingdom. He formed Fire Nation colonies in the Earth Kingdom, such as Yu Dao, a colony that comes out much later in the series while Zuko was Fire Lord. Roku was furious about this and went to confront Sozin. Sozin was immediately angry at how Roku addressed him, as he was the Fire Lord, and demanded respect. Sozin called Roku a traitor, and Roku begged his old friend not to challenge him. Roku told his friend that it was over, and as he walked away, Sozin tried to hit Roku with a cheap shot, giving him everything he had, a blow that could have and should have killed Roku had he not been the Avatar. Roku, realizing that the friend he had once known was gone, took him down and went into the Avatar state. He destroyed the palace that they were in and had Sozin dead to rights. Sozin was not the friend that Roku had once known. He was now a different, malicious, evil, and selfish person. Roku knew that he should have taken him down once and for all, and had it been anyone else, he would have. He, however, spared him in the name of their past friendship. He was blinded by his past, and what he wanted to believe was still inside his old friend, that he was still the young and friendly boy he had grown up with. Roku knew that if he did not kill Sozin, he still had to ensure the safety and peace for the rest of the world. He told Sozin that if he had a single step out of line, that he would end him for good. The threat worked, and Sozin obeyed Roku. The two did not see or speak to each other for 25 years after that. Roku continued his life with Ta-Min and continued to fulfill his duties as the Avatar. In his old age, he was spending much more time at his home, but at this point, his daughter Rina had gotten old enough to move out and start her own life in the Fire Nation. One night while Roku and Ta-Min were staying in their home, the volcano on their island erupted. As they rushed out of their house, Roku dropped the headpiece that had been given to him by Sozin. Roku got Ta-Min and the other civilians that lived on the island to safety and tried to save their homes and the island. The eruption was huge. No one in the Fire Nation had ever seen anything like it. Roku battled the volcano using all four elements and was winning, but his success did not last long. Roku knew that there was no way he could do it all. While he fought, he could barely breathe. The poisonous volcanic gases were overwhelming. His dragon Fang tried to come to his rescue, but Roku told him to leave as he went into the Avatar state. He was able to stop the volcano from destroying everything on the island, but seconds later, another one right next to it erupted as well. Roku did not have much fight left in him, and his face showed true exhaustion, disappointment, and fear. Just then, Sozin came to his rescue riding on his own dragon, and Roku had hope again. He could not believe that his friend whom he had not seen for 25 years was there to help him. It was just like the good old days. He no longer saw the sadistic Fire Lord, but once again saw his friend that he had known all those years ago when they were young. The two worked together to stop the eruption, and Roku even saved Sozin's life before he fell off the cliff. As they were fleeing, however, Roku got hit full in the face with a toxic gas, and it was more than his old body could handle. He fell to the ground and reached out his hand to his old friend for help. Roku was shocked and disappointed when Sozin told him that without Roku around, all his plans were finally possible. Roku was left there to die as Sozin flew away on his dragon. Roku was knelt on the ground, all alone, until Fang came down to his master, and the two were engulfed by the island. After everything on the island had settled, Roku's daughter Rina went to visit the site where her father had died. There she found the headpiece that Sozin had given to Roku, which he wore all of his life. Rina kept it safe at home, where she raised her daughter and Roku's granddaughter, Ursa. When Sozin's son, Fire Lord Azulon, came to Rina's house with his own son, Prince Ozai, they informed Rina and her husband Jinzuk that Ozai was going to propose to Ursa. Rina took out her father's headpiece and cried, waiting for her daughter to come home. She knew what that family was capable of, and knew that they could have saved her father from a horrid and painful death. Tears fell as she held the headpiece, knowing that her daughter would be forced to become a part of that awful family. Roku's headpiece would eventually find its way to Iroh, and during the events of the Last Airbender series, he gave it to Roku's great-grandson, Zuko. Even though Roku died, this was not the end of his story or his legacy. He continued to live on through the avatars after him. Roku used his dragon Fang in the spirit world to contact Aang, and was later able to warn Aang about Sozin's comet. Roku informed him how his old friend had used the comet 100 years prior to fill out the plans he had let Roku die for so that the Fire Nation could expand and conquer. Sozin's grandson Ozai now planned to use the same comet 100 years later to finish the war that Sozin had started after Roku's death. Roku then gave Aang the mission that would define the Last Airbender series, to master all 4 elements and defeat the Fire Lord before the comet arrived. After that, Roku took over Aang's body to get him out of a fight with Zuko, Zhao, and the Fire Sages, and showed his true power by destroying the temple that he had once called his home. He later appeared not to Aang, but to Zhang Zhang the Deserter to scare him into teaching Aang firebending. During Aang's journey, Roku became a mentor and spiritual guide, giving him information or advice when he was lost or did not know what to do. During the siege of the Northern Water Tribe, he told Aang in the spirit world to find Ko to learn about the ocean and moon spirits to help them stop the Fire Nation's attack. He also taught him about the Avatar state, how it worked, and how he could use his past lives, including Roku himself, to help him on his journey. When Aang gave up after he was almost killed in Ba Sing Se, Roku appeared to him, saying that he did not fail. Roku then admitted that if there was anyone to blame for the state of the world, it was himself, referring to his weakness when it came to sparing his old friend Sozin. He told Aang that he inherited his problems and his mistakes. He then told Aang that he was destined to redeem him and save the world. Later on, Roku showed Aang his life and the mistakes he made with Sozin to help Aang better understand how the war started and why he needed to end it. Even though Roku was a mentor for Aang, the two had some disagreements about morals and what was right versus what was wrong. When Aang needed advice on what to do about Fire Lord Ozai, Roku said that he should kill him. He explained that in his life, he tried to be disciplined and show restraint, but said that it all backfired, starting the war that Aang was now fighting. Aang, however, was set on not killing Ozai, and ultimately did not listen to Roku, finding another way by taking Ozai's bending. He and Aang butted heads again about a year after the war ended. Aang was once again faced with taking another Fire Lord down, but this time it was Zuko, who, as I said, was actually Roku's great-grandson, as his granddaughter Ursa had Zuko and Azula with Ozai. Aang had promised Zuko that if he started to become a threat, that Aang needed to take his life, and that day had come. He called on Roku using his necklace, and Roku said that even though the war was over, the world was still not at peace. Roku apologized to Aang, saying that he was still dealing with the consequences of his own indecisiveness. Roku felt very strongly that Aang should fulfill his promise, saying that his great-grandson was in his clearest moment when he asked Aang to make that promise. Roku pointed out that this was the exact same situation that he was in all those years ago, but this time, Aang was Roku, and Zuko was Sozin, who was actually Zuko's other great-grandfather, this time on his father's side. Roku saw the parallels, and it scared him. He mentioned how so many died because he let his friend go, and told Aang not to make the same mistake. When Aang asked Roku if he regretted not killing Sozin, Roku immediately said yes, without hesitation. Aang was a little shocked and said that Sozin was his friend, and Roku responded saying that he was more than just a friend, but a brother. But because of his brother, the world burned. Aang of course disagreed with all of this, but Roku said to use his knowledge and remember that when you're in a position of power, you must put the needs of the world before your own. When Aang came face to face with Zuko, he almost did what Roku had told him to do, but restrained himself at the last minute. When a war was about to start because of Zuko, Aang called on Roku again using his necklace, and Roku once again said to fulfill the promise and kill Zuko. When Aang said that it was not the Air Nation way, Roku said that the Avatar has to put the world above his own nation, his own friends, and even his own family, saying that it pained him to advocate for the death of his great-grandson, but said that it had to be done. When Aang asked Roku how he could be so cruel as to kill his own family, Roku said it was because it's the Avatar's duty, and in order for Aang to succeed where he failed, he must advocate to put the world above all else. Roku left him with the words saying, "Contemplate the world." Aang was once again able to stop the conflict without killing, refusing to listen to Roku. After everything had calmed down and Aang was in Ba Sing Se, he called on Roku again using his necklace, and he told him that he wasn't like him, but Roku responded, saying that they were the same person. Aang was disgusted that Roku had said to kill his own great-grandson, and said that when he told him to contemplate the world, he saw all of his loved ones and allies, including Zuko. Roku shot back, saying that by not killing Zuko, he put the world at risk, but Aang said it was a new world. Aang then thanked Roku for everything he had taught him, and said that he would not be the Avatar he was today without him, but finished by saying that he had to figure the rest out on his own. Aang said goodbye, and Roku reached out desperately calling for him as he blew away into dust. Aang cried as he snapped the necklace and burned it, cutting off his connection with Roku. By doing this, Aang not only cut Roku off, but all of his past lives as well. Later on, however, Aang made a new necklace and was reunited with Roku. While Aang tried to explain himself for cutting him off, Roku just put his arms out and the two hugged. As they hugged, Aang told Roku that he missed him so much. Roku then explained that Aang's past lives only advise based on their own triumphs and failures, but it's the current Avatar's job to find balance not just between the spirits and humans, but between the past and present Avatars. The two patching things up mended Aang's connection with the other past Avatars as well. After Aang passed away, Roku was there to help the next Avatar, Korra. He stood with Aang and the other past Avatars after she lost her bending. Aang helped her get into the Avatar state for the first time, and Roku and all the other past Avatars entered the Avatar state as well, restoring Korra's bending. Roku's end finally came when Rava, the spirit that linked the past Avatars, was killed, severing Korra's and all future Avatars' connection with their past lives. Avatar Roku was very powerful, and he was very different from Aang. He made a lot of mistakes that he regretted, but becoming Aang's mentor was the best thing that ever happened to him because he had Aang redeem his mistakes. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can follow me on social media. Links for that will be down below. If you like this video, make sure you press that subscribe button to help grow the channel. I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons listed below. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a bunch of other rewards, check out my Patreon. Again, thank you so much for watching, and look out for more great videos on the way.